Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about a follow-up question. So let's get into it. So the question in question was basically posted on the last one, which was why do staff and principal level software engineers go into management and focus more on soft skills than coding skills and why are those more important at that level? And so the follow-up is, have you been a staff engineer and what was your responsibilities? And the short answer is yes. Yes, I have been a staff engineer. Basically, and this is why I tell you that it's very difficult for you to define the roles or like the responsibilities of what you do as a staff engineer, because like, I have other staff engineers. Some of them are like they don't know the first thing about serious software development. They're just talking with people, educating, sitting in meetings, suggesting ADRs and RFC styles of work frameworks. Like they're all like about documentation or product management, etc., etc. And then you have some people who are like, it's difficult to say exactly what their role is going to be because their job is to educate teams and so forth. But when you have well, to me, this is where it becomes difficult, because if you give people the role staff engineer or something like that, you're basically creating a middle manager. And I think that most people will be able to testify that there are quite a lot of middle management people in the different companies of the world who have like no concrete value. Like their job is almost like figuring out what are you supposed to be doing, because it's so fluffy what they're supposed to be doing. And in some cases they might be unable to do anything, and so they sort of just float around and sit and talk to people, or like they are involved in meetings and they sort of just peruse the office spaces, do like jumping into meetings with people or like within their network, because some companies are so big that it's like it's a community basically. It's like the size of a small town, and when and that's the problem. Like what I have been tasked with has much more to do with delivering on different technical projects. So and to give you like something more concrete. So when I was last time I was promoted to a staff engineer, it basically became the situation where my manager came to me and said that I have this team, I would need you to run it. Can you think of can you basically take responsibility for taking over this team? Now this is usually what I've been doing before, like tech lead stuff, like you run a team. That's basically it. And then he said, but my ambition here is for you to take over and actually run the work framework, or like basically set up the technical architecture for this team and this platform, like this initiative that we're trying to do. Basically, that's an architect's job. But he can't just give me the job to be an architect, because traditionally an architect doesn't do the coding. Traditionally, at least not in this company, the architects are all planning people. That's all they do. They plan, talk, sit in meetings, set up this documentation, etc., etc. So now he has a problem. He needs me to basically pull the wagon myself until he can attach. Like it's in a sense it becomes like running your own company. Basically, you're creating the thing, and then you get more people, and then you lead those people, and then you get more teams, like other people who join on to the thing that you're trying to create, right? And now you're going to lead them as well. And so that became my job. It basically became it started out basically as building the thing and setting up the CI pipelines, updating the code, and like making sure that everything, there wasn't like 100 million lines of legacy code. Like putting the tech stack onto the what we call the golden path, where it's just a term that you may or not have heard that there's a range of technologies a company is betting on, and then you simply try to follow those guidelines. And that's sort of all I did for the first few months. And then they added more people to my team, and then of course then that means that now I'm a tech lead again. which means that now my responsibility becomes not just doing the coding, it also comes down to documenting all the things, making sure that the team is running efficiently, setting up, like we didn't really have anyone else, so I took care of that as well. Setting up, like, you know, the Kanban board, these retros, like all the things, like to work in a lean fashion, because I prefer like just doing lean things as opposed to Scrum or something like that, and basically establishing my own team, if that makes sense. And then more people joined. I onboarded them so that they understood how to work effectively with the team. And then after a little while, my role went from leading the team hands-on to basically just sitting there and consulting with the people who were in the team. So my official title was still tech lead, but now we had like a PO, we had like all the like managers and so forth who have been involved. I was just the first person. You can almost think of me as the first worker, the seed of the team and the seed of the project, if that makes sense. So I built the thing, and now it's more that I consult and I manage the team, and so forth and so forth. And that brings me to what then happens, which is that now my role gets morphed into taking greater responsibilities towards more areas. So as a staff engineer, as I said, it really just comes down to what are your talents, what can they use you for, and what do they need you to be doing. And so I got the job because I have a well-rounded profile, if that makes sense. You can, I'm not going to try to toot my own horn too much now, but what I'm saying is that you can basically give me any job. It's very likely that unless it's something very specialized, something highly, like, I mean, we're talking like research level or something which in a domain that I don't have any knowledge of, then I'm going to be able to deliver whatever it is. It doesn't matter basically what it is. It can be anything from, because I mean that's what I'm doing, helping the new teams that are joining now, which, you know, basically my role goes now to, all right, so now my last part of it was just to establish all the work that was going to be done for a single team so that they could be established, and now that's done. Now the next team is coming along, and now I need to set up a work framework for an entire suite of teams, because my responsibility is going to be much more of an architect level type of thing, where now I need to establish shared dependencies, shared workflows, set up like a off-the-shelf setup so that they can get all the pipelines done, all the infrastructure should be done, all the like testing suites, etc., etc. It becomes like my job basically becomes to make sure that all the new teams that join the company can just plug in, like they can establish their project, and then they're basically done. They shouldn't necessarily need to be able to know all the things that I might know, or like the ops teams or so forth, in order to set all this up. It should already be in a state where they can come to me, and I should ideally have made myself into a person where basically anything they need, I can help them figure out. If they need help with planning out things, so they need to know where things are, etc., etc. And this is in a gigantic organization, so it's such a wide area that I basically have to do work with quite a lot of, and touch point with quite a lot of teams in order to figure out how are all these different teams working together, and so have that holistic understanding of everything. But still, as I said, it's not a fluff, it's not like a soft skills role. It's soft skills is one part of it, because one part of it is that I need to understand how all the teams work, and I need to be able to explain to them and like set up like documentation and like discussions and so forth about what are we going to standardize on. Are we going to use this? Are we going to use that? Etc., etc. And then set up plans with all the teams so that they get a technical roadmap. Okay, when are you going to be done with this thing? And in some cases, as it has been the case, where the team needs support, like hands-on support, then I join that team and I help them. Like I do the coding, which is like I still do, I would say, different weeks are different, but it can be anything from, if there's a lot of planning for a lot of teams, it might be that I do 50-50 coding, or like 80-20 or something like that, where meetings and like alignments and so forth. And then apart from that, everybody who is joining the platform, like part of that sphere, have a weekly sync up with me where we're basically talking about the high level stuff, where I tell them like, all right, these are the things that management wants this suite, or like this region, like this community of teams to focus on. And then I talk with all the teams and sort of figure out, okay, what are your blockers, what do we need to do, etc., etc. And then we set up plans and align on like shared libraries and so forth. And usually it very organically becomes the case that I own all like the shared stuff, like things that the interdependencies between teams if they're sharing things and so forth, because somebody needs to. And then we most likely establish a team around that as well, which we would call like a platform team or something like that. And that's a vastly different job description, or like very different thing from some of my other, as I said, some of the other coworkers that I have. They're like all talk, or like they only sit in meetings basically all the time. They don't involve themselves to this level. So I think it's a fair assessment to say that when you get to be a staff engineer or like a principal engineer, your role very much comes down to you can basically just think of it as an experienced person, someone who knows a lot about something in the technical in the engineering department. And now the company has a need for someone to take a more holistic responsibility for quite a lot of stuff, and your work can look very, very differently from situation to situation. I mean, guys, they've asked me to take over things like social media responsibilities, where like they want me to do, due to the fact that I do these sorts of videos and so forth, to like help them with recruitment efforts, to do that, or to help them with the standardization of API documentation, etc., etc. And in my case, the reason why I get those responsibilities and like that width is because that is my profile. I'm not a master, anything like that, but I know a lot. I know a few things about quite a lot of different things. But for the next principal or staff engineer, it might be that, yeah, they're just dedicated to one specific thing because they're extra good at that thing. So what I want you to take away from this is that the roles, yes, I've been a staff engineer, and yes, I can tell you that the responsibilities of a staff engineer it's very fluffy. It can be many different things. It can be anything from that you're just extra responsible, like you're what I call a true senior. You're the person who is responsible for a given product or a given project or something like that. It can also mean that you spend almost all your time being like facilitating discussions or sitting in meetings all day long about different technical initiatives that are going to happen within the company. You're basically an architect or some archetype of an architect, or like a site reliability engineer or something like that. You create policy or so forth, or document things like ADRs or RFCs or something like that. Or then you can be a freak like me, who is basically just well, the way that they refer to me is special forces, or like that's the term, like the platform teams or so forth, which is like like you basically, if you have a problem, you send me or like people who have the same sort of like similar sort of role as me into the situation, and then basically say, hey, we want this output, go and fix it. And I have other people like that. I know a few guys who have a similar sort of profile, where like they might tell them that, yeah, we have this gigantic old system, we want to fix that, we don't want to use this system, we want to use this system instead, move us to this platform. And he kind of goes, okay, I'm gonna need 2 or 3 people with these profiles and this amount of time, and then he goes and does it. And I have a similar sort of role. They give me a task, here is this project that was like a startup hackathon thing, convert that into an enterprise application, and then establish a work framework so we can add more products onto that platform. And I go, yes sir, and then I go and do that. Have a great day.